Well, if you're watching this video, you already know that everything you need is set up for this assignment is set up on Google Classroom. This is a link right here for turning in the assignment when it's done. This help page it has everything I'm about to show you documented. It has step-by-step instructions. But I'm just going to go to work on showing you what I want you to do. This assignment today has to do with Adobe. We're using Adobe XD, and I can tell you more about it when I get back in person, but Adobe XD is a program that will help you kind of do layouts for like apps for a phone or for a computer. And I want you to try out some things in Adobe XD today. So here I have it running, and what you would do is click your Windows button down the bottom left-hand corner and then look for Adobe XD, and that's the program that we're going to use today. First of all, click this button for custom size. It'll be kind of over to the right. So you click the button for custom size, and I'm just gonna size my window a little bit here to fit my recording. That should work okay. And your next step would be over here on the left-hand side. There's a toolbar over on the left. It doesn't have a ton of tools, and we'll learn about them as we go, but there's an artboard tool. So I'm going to click the artboard tool. As soon as I click the artboard tool, I get a whole bunch of presets over here on the right-hand side for different devices. There's a whole bunch of iPhone sizes, iPads, Apple Watches, Android mobile, which would be for like Android phones, Android tablets, Surface Pro, and I'm not going to be real picky about what device you pick today. You can just pick whatever in fact, I'm just going to go with this iPhone 6, 7, 8 Plus. That's what I'm going to use today, but you can pick anything you want off of this list. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to pick the iPhone 6, 7, 8 Plus, and then what happens is there's a layout here that would be that size. This one says it's the iPhone 6, 7, 8. So I want you today to have 3 screens. This is just one screen. So my next step would be go get this black arrow tool, hold down the Alt key, and drag that first screen that makes another one. Now, if you need to move your window over so you got more room, you can hold down the space bar and just drag it over and then let go of the space bar. If you have my graphics class, a lot of this is like any other Adobe app. Now, one more time, I'm going to use this arrow tool up here. I'm going to hold down the Alt key on the keyboard and drag this over and make a third screen. All right, so I've got 3 of them. Next thing I'm going to do is use my black arrow, and I'm going to double click on the names of these screens. Let me get rid of those. I'm going to double click on the names of these screens, and I'm just going to call, and these could be, this is just for you keeping track of your screens, and I'm just going to call them screen 1, and then over here I'll double click on this name of this screen up here. Trying to get in there, and this will be screen 2, and then I'm going to double click on this name up here, and this will be screen 3. You may have to try it a couple of times or triple click it or whatever. All right, so I've got screen 1, screen 2, and screen 3. Cool. Now the next thing I'm going to go back and double click on screen 1, and what I want to do now is set its fill color. So let's set it to something besides white, right? So over here on the right hand side there's a little section for appearance, and there's a fill box, and I'm going to go with kind of a bluish color. I want something lightish blue, kind of like that. Now if you wish, and let's see, this should still be in my recording window. On this color picker, there's a little plus sign toward the bottom of the color picker, and I'm going to click that because it adds a color swatch down here, which means I could use this color again if I want to. So I'm going to do that. Actually, I'm going to double or click, make sure that screen 2 is selected. You can see it's selected when it gets those handles around it, and I want to fill that, and I'm going to fill it with the same blue color. Now I got to fill screen 3, so I'll just select screen 3, and I want to fill that with the same blue color. Now you could have your screens be all different colors if you want. That's just what I'm doing. I want them to be all the same color. The next thing that we're going to do to these 3 screens is just add some text. It's not going to say a whole lot, but the type tool is the capital letter T over here, and so I'm going to click that, and I'll come out and I'll just click once on the screen. Now this is, again, I just want to label these. We're not doing anything fancy today. I just want to label these. So I'm just going to call this screen 1. And then I'm going to take the arrow tool and I'm going to do a couple of things. when I create a text object in this program and I select it with the arrow tool, there's this little white dot which allows me to resize it. I can just kind of drag on the white dot there and I can make it a little bit bigger. All right, so it just says screen 1. Now I could do a couple of things to this. Over on the right hand side for text, I could certainly change the font. If you'll look over there, there is a, see, I just changed the font to that Snap ITC. I don't think I'm going to go with that. I'll go with Verdana. I like Verdana. I like it's a nice clean font. I like the way it looks. And I could, if I scroll this down, and there's some other font options over here that you could certainly look at. But again, we're not doing anything fancy today, right? So I'm going to come over here to the fill setting on that, and I'm going to click the fill box, and I would like for it to be darker. I'd like for it to be black. By default, the program kind of makes it just kind of a gray, and I want it to be black. So I'm going to set it to black over here, and that's not a hard color to locate, so I'm not going to worry about like adding a swatch to it. You could add things like a border and a shadow and things like that. You could experiment with that. You're not going to break anything. You're not going to hurt anything. So you could certainly play around with adding a border or a shadow to your text. But you know what? I'm pretty good with what I got here. Now, I want there to be text on all 3 of your screens today, but again, I'm going to use a quicker way to do this. I think I'm going to use the arrow tool, hold the Alt key, drag this over, and put one over here, and I will hold the Alt key, click, and drag this over, and I'll put one over here. Now, I don't want them to say screen 1, screen 1, screen 1, so I'm just going to double click to get into editing mode, and I'm going to get in here and make that say, sorry, I gotta get it selected here. All right, so I get it selected, and I'm just going to change that to screen 2, and then over here I'm going to get that selected. So you got to double click to get into editing mode. Oops, I didn't want to make a 2 there. I wanted to make a 3. So it's just this kind of thing. Now, you know, you could, if it's school appropriate, you could say something different there. Pretend you're making a little app about something if you want to, but I'm just keeping it very simple today. All right, the next thing I want to do is just stick some kind of picture on here, and I'll tell you what, I just went out on the internet and found some Christmas pictures. Right, it's not anything but any school appropriate picture would be okay. I want you to go through the process of putting pictures on here. All right, well, so the way you do this is this little menu that's in the top left corner of Adobe XD. It just looks like 3 little lines, and it has an option on here. If you scroll it down far enough, it has an option on here for import. All right, so I'm going to import a picture. I'm going to import, right? Don't do open. That's not, I don't think that's going to work, so do import. And I'm just going to, I've just got, like I said, I went out on the internet and I found some Christmas pictures, okay, whatever. So I'm going to import this, and then I could just kind of drag that around. I really kind of want that to be on screen number 1, and I could make it a little bit bigger. And I'm using the arrow tool to move it and make it bigger and put it where I want it and those kinds of things. Now again, over here on the right-hand side where I have all these appearance options, I could do some things like maybe put a border around the picture. And when you put a border around a picture, you can increase its size. Maybe I'll make that about 5 pixels wide. And I could, you know, I could do things like I could add a shadow. If you're going to add a shadow, you might want to bring up its opacity a little bit so you can see it a little better. This slider over here is for opacity. And you can play with things like the X offset and the Y. Just play with stuff. You're not going to hurt anything. You're not going to break anything. So get in there and change those numbers and see what you can do. So I've added a shadow, and I've put a little X offset and a little Y offset and a little blur into it. And so my picture has a little bit of a shadow. Cool. All right. So let's get 2 more pictures on here. I'll go to that menu again, and I'll go to import. And I've got another Christmas picture on here somewhere. You can see other pictures that I have loaded for other little examples and things. All right, so I'm going to get that picture on there. I think I am going to add a border because I feel like it. And I'm going to make that border like 5 pixels thick. I don't know that I'm going to put a shadow on that one. You could. And then 1 more to go. All right, so I'll do file, or that menu in the corner. I always say file, but it's just a menu in the corner. Right now I've got these icicles. It's not really a Christmas picture, but it's a winter picture. Okay, yeah, great. All right, so I've got pictures on there, and that's, really all I want you to do there is just get some pictures on the page. And use that little menu in the corner and do import and pull the picture in and put it on. You can use your arrow tool and move it around, put it wherever you want. Now, here's the other thing we're going to add to this. We're going to add a little navigation to it. Now, to do that, I went out on the internet and just did a Google image search. I've already got it downloaded, but like I did a right arrow PNG, and that should give you some options. It's an image search. It should give you some options on arrows that have a transparent background. Right? You see, I got a whole bunch of them there. So I saved one of them, and to get them onto the screen, it's the same thing as I did before. I'm going to go to that import button, and you can see actually I've saved several of them. So here's one that I have, and I'll import that, and it looks gray because it's gray. I got one off the internet that is kind of a gray color. It's not like deep black. All right, so I'm just going to put that on there. Now I want to use that again several times. So I'm going to hold the Alt key and drag it. I'll put a copy of it there. I'm going to hold the Alt key and drag this one, and drag it and put it there, and I'll hold the Alt key and drag this. Now, I've got some arrows that are kind of pointing the wrong way. If you think like navigation, if screen 1 going to screen 2, yeah, that should probably point to the right. But over here on screen 2, I'm kind of thinking, okay, I want arrows that will go either way. And this one here that I have selected right now is pointing the wrong way. Well, all right, so take your mouse, point to a corner, and rotate it. There we go. All right, so that looks better. That makes more sense. On screen number 2, I have one pointing back to where I came from and one pointing forward to the next page. Now this one, again, I feel like it's kind of pointing the wrong way. I would rather have that point back to screen 2, so I'm going to point to the corner of it with my mouse and rotate it. There we go. So I like that better. All right, now the setup is done. What you got to do today is you got to put text on each one of these. You got to stick a picture on each one. It kind of doesn't matter if they're just kind of random today. We're going to get into more organized things later. But now what I got to do is I've got to add some navigation to this. Okay, so here's what that looks like. Up at the top, you go to this prototype tab. All I've been doing so far is just designing it. But now I'm going to go to the prototype tab, and I'm going to click on this arrow that's on screen 1, and if you look closely, you'll see a little blue kind of, it's called a pick whip. And I'm going to click it and drag it and drop it over here on screen 2. Bingo. And it makes a connection. So what that means is if this was really an app, if somebody tapped that button, it would go to screen 2. Now I got to do the same thing for all of the buttons. So like this arrow that is actually kind of pointing back towards screen 1, I'm going to grab the little pick whip handle and stretch it. So I probably should have picked a different background color other than blue. That probably might have been a good idea. Maybe I'll do that just really quick. No, I won't. On screen 2 also, this arrow needs to go forward to screen 3. All right, so it makes these little connections. See these little connection wires? They're called wires. All right, and on screen number 3, I want to pick whip my way back to screen number 2 because I want anybody who is actually using this thing to be able to navigate it. So this one is connected, the first one on the left is connected to screen 2, and this is connected back to screen 1. This button is connected over to screen 3. This screen 3 button is connected back to screen 2. And I've got navigation for everything, right? Now for each one of these buttons there are, we'll get into this more later, but there's some transitions over here and there's some actions over here, and we'll talk about that later, but let's just see how you can actually kind of test it a little bit now. Way over here on the right-hand side, top right-hand side, there's a play button. And I can click that play button, and this, I think, is barely fitting in my recording screen, but here it is. This is kind of what it would look like if it was like on your phone, right? And if somebody tapped this button right here, it would go over to screen 2. And if somebody taps this button, it would go to screen 3, and I can get back to screen 2. And on screen 2, I have a back button that goes back to screen 1. And these buttons could really be made out of it. They could be made out of little circles or whatever. I just made them arrows because arrows kind of make sense to me, right? So you can click these buttons to navigate through your little preview window, and hey, look, it's working. I made a little layout, a little mock-up that has some text, it has some pictures, it has navigatable buttons. Cool, right? So I'm going to go ahead and close the preview window, and here I'm back into Adobe XD where all of my design work and my prototype work. The prototype work wasn't that much, it was just connecting, the pick whip, right? So now it's got to be saved. Okay, well, I can do it a couple of ways, and here's what I think is a great way to do it. Up in the top middle, where it says, it probably says Untitled 1. So if I click that, it just drops me down a little dialog box here where I can come along and say, okay, this is XD assignment number 1. So I'm just going to call it XD number 1, and I want to just save it on my computer. Now I'm not at school right now, so you could go to you could click on your computer and click. I don't know if it'll probably say documents there. And you could select your network drive, right? You could save it on your network drive. You could probably safely save it in your documents folder. That probably wouldn't be a terrible place to save it, but you need to pay attention to where you save it. So like in my case, I think I'll save it I'll save it in my documents folder I'm working on a laptop. And so I'll save it on my documents folder, and I'll have to say select folder right here. Okay, so it's set up. It's got a document name, and it knows where to save it, right? And I can hit save. Boom. So my work is saved now. Whew, safe. Okay, so I could close Adobe XD, and then back here on Google Classroom, I could use this link right here to turn it in. And if you don't know how to do that, I'll help you when I get back. I got to bail out of this movie, so it's time for you to go to work.